There was the shadow again, walking further and further away from him. Its steps were soft, no sound coming from underneath them. The surrounding was shrouded in darkness, and pale white lights could be seen here and there. The ground was littered with twigs and stones, but they made no sound as he walked on them. But just when he managed to catch up with the shadow person, the ground underneath him opened again, and he felt himself falling. Eden woke up with a start, knocking some books off the desk during the process and attracting the attention of some other students in the library. Did I seriously doze off in the library? He gave the school librarian an apologetic look and stacked the books back up and left the room, still attempting to get himself together. He had been having similar dreams every time he slept these days, and each time he felt himself getting more and more distant from the shadowy figure. The first time, he had been standing right next to it. Then, slowly, in each dream, he grew more distant from the figure which had lately started to walk. And nowadays, when he tried to follow it, the ground opened up and swallowed him. It was as if a warning to not follow said figure. So, Ethan had stopped trying to follow it. But his body would never cooperate. It was a subconscious act. However, at the same time, the figure, although having no specific appearance to them, appeared familiar to Eden. Back in reality, as he walked through the corridors, Eden accidentally bumps into a guy, sending himself falling onto the floor. Let's add that to the list of times I made something fall down today. He grumbled in his mind and hastily picked the books up. He felt the other guy attempt to give him a hand, but Eden simply ignored it and made it out of there. He wasn't trying to be rude. He just didn't really like to socialize that much with others, and that included getting their help. He did wonder whether the other guy took him the wrong way, but that was not his problem. It wasn't like he was shy or anything. Eden never really preferred talking if we could go without it. Classes went on as usual, but Eden only half listened as his mind went back to his dream. It had been some time since he had started having them, ever since that incident. And while he wasn't one to believe in the paranormal, anyone would start thinking on that side after witnessing such dreams for a long time. Eden sighed to himself and went back to listening to the teacher. What they were learning was really interesting, but Eden wasn't really focused on that, which surprised Eden himself. After school, he had a group project with some friends who agreed to join at one house for a small 30-minute meeting. The group were discussing on what their final projects would look like. Most of them discussed about what to include, while Eden remained on the sidelines, basically listening to them. At one point, one of the guys had tapped him on the back and had asked, Eden, what do you think of the class? Eden quickly snapped back into concentration and said, Yeah, I think so. And maybe we should. The conversation continues with Eden giving short replies and opinions. The others don't seem to mind though, and Eden is completely fine with it. He preferred it that way too. Once the group had ended the meeting, Eden walked out of his friend's house and had been walking by himself while aimlessly scrolling on his phone when a girl suddenly ran past him, holding a stack of paper with earbuds on, clearly listening to something. However, he had noticed paper escaping from the stack and falling onto the ground. The girl, who hadn't noticed this, turned at the corner. Eden picked it up and had just been about to follow her and give it. He wasn't one to shout out. However, just as his feet moved, a loud crash occurred as two vehicles collided with each other, pulling his attention away. It had occurred near him, and he had fallen to the pavement ground in shock. People were running towards the scene, but Eden found himself immediately getting up and rushing away from it. His chest was hammering. There was a ringing in his ears. Somehow, he finds himself at his house and enters. He collapsed onto the sofa and attempted to calm himself, taking in deep breaths. You can do it. Come on, deep breaths, Eden. It's not happening again. After a few seconds, he feels his breathing going back to normal. Just as he had calmed himself down, he hears his mother's voice. Eden, did you come home? Did something happen? Ian immediately calmed himself down further. He didn't want his mother to see him like this. He went to the living room and into the backyard garden where he knew she probably was, and as expected, found her gardening, pulling out some weeds. Nothing, Mom, just a little out of breath. He looked around at the garden his mother had been working on for about a year now. It had quite a few blooming flowers, much greenery, and some bird feeders. Eden knew she worked very hard to get this outcome. He went back inside, but just as he lifted his bag from where he had dropped it after entering in a hurry, he notices a sheet of paper next to it. It then dawned to him. He had run home with the girl's slip. His mind had been too messed up to think about it during that time. Eden grabbed the paper and looked at it clearly for the first time. It appeared to be sheet music. Could this be important? He thought. The sheet was a printed one with several handwritten notes, so it seemed to be. There was also today's date and a side note saying original to play at party. Great, so now I have to deal with this. He was really wondering if he had to go searching for that girl that evening, but seeing as he had a bit more time, and since the suit did look important, Eden decides to just walk in town for a while, and if he comes across the girl, to give it to her. It was not because he wanted to find her specifically and hand over the seat. Eden went off after telling his mother he'd be back before dinner. Eden walked along the pavement for a while. There was a soft breeze and the evening sunlight felt good. I wonder what happened at the vehicle accident though, he thought. He shuddered at the incident. Who would have thought it to happen so suddenly? But then again, all of them were sudden. As he was thinking about this, a small butterfly landed on Eden's shoulder. Eden turned around quickly, but the little insect had left its perch and was now fluttering above him. It looked like a everyday basic white one. Eden watched it flutter for a while before going back to walking, ignoring the insect. However, said insect once again flew in his peripera for a while, and then it started to glow, giving out a small white light which seemed to entirely cover it, as if illuminating it. The small creature started flying away to the distance. Eden watched it fly away, and then he started walking back on his own path. The butterfly, however, seemed to have a different idea and suddenly flew back in front of him, fluttering in his peripatetic and moving again. Eden just looked at it. The butterfly stopped and suddenly flew at a distance that a normal butterfly should not have the capacity of, and then Eden felt himself fall to the ground. He groaned, and then, did a butterfly just hit me? How is that possible? Aren't they supposed to be, I don't know, fragile? The said butterfly just fluttered above him, and Eden once again groaned and said, "If I follow you, would you leave me alone?" The butterfly literally dimmed its light before brightening, as if to say yes. Eden groaned once again. "I'm going crazy. I think I just talked to a butterfly." But deciding that he did not want to deal with this pesky creature again, he follows. He followed the butterfly for a good while, until they reached the edge of the forest. And then he attempts to go back, because no, he was not going into the forest. But the butterfly suddenly appears in front of him and did the same manner he did last time, and he then found himself falling right onto a slope which sent him sliding down. Eden felt a scream leave his mouth as he felt himself sliding downwards among a cage of branches and leaves. At last, he stops, landing on a flat area. Eden groaned, getting up, rubbing his back as he said out loud, "I'm falling on my back way too many times today." He checked himself, and miraculously, there were no injuries, just some bruising. He looked around and realized the butterfly was not there. He looked for a while and realized he was also lost. Eden yelled out, "Okay, what do you want from me? First you make me follow you, then you throw me in a forest, and now you're gone. Really?" It was after his ranting did he realize that he had been yelling at a butterfly that wasn't even there. Realizing that there was no use, Eden felt in his pockets to see if his phone was in there. It wasn't. Probably still back at home. Eden groaned. Great. Just great. He looked up at the sky. It was getting darker now. He'll have to find a way out sooner or later. However, just as he was about to look around, he heard a yelp, a very human one, and it came from up. Eden looked up to find someone falling, coming right towards him. "Oh crap," was his last thought.